Welcome back to DataPower Gateway Training. In this video, we are going to see the overview of XML Firewall. So the XML Firewall is used to process both XML and non-XML traffics. This protocol supports only HTTP and HTTPS. The front-end handler for this firewall isn't on one IP and port. It has the same level of threat protection how other services are having. Also, it's have a multi-step processing capability. What is meant by multi-step processing? It has the one processing policy and it can have multiple rules can be executed. Each rules can have multiple actions. Also, it supports the loopback, which means it doesn't require any backend, the real backend. DataPower can act as a server for the XML firewall. So this is the XML firewall types, then various number of backend services available. So if you see there's a loopback, no backend, static backend, always we are going to call the same server and IP. Dynamic backend, we are going to determine the dynamic backend during the runtime. Also it has the XML Manager, the firewall policy and the workflow of the services and URL rewrite policy and device address. So I will open the XML firewall and you can able to see those things here. If I'm opening some of the XML firewall which we have created on that section 1. So here you can see the XML Manager. This is what I'm talking about. By default is assigned to the default XML Manager. So don't edit anything on the default XML Manager. The plus sign means you can create a service specific XML Manager. It's an advanced topic, we will come back to this later. And this is the processing policy, which means each firewall tied up with at least only one processing policy, and each processing policy can have multiple rules. So this is what I told you. This is the policy which can the rules. This is the request rule as well as the response rule. The rule direction you can see we saw that before client to server and server to client and both direction and the error, which means the client to server is whenever the request coming from the client to DataPower, we need to execute the rule. That's what the request rule is. The server to client, which means the response is coming from the backend server and DataPower wants to process that backend response before sending it to the client. We need to execute that rule. That's called the response rule. And both directions, if you need to have a common rule which can be executed on both client to server as well as the server to client, the request as well as the response, you can execute the same kind of rule. The error rule, you can create an error rule which will be normally used if there is any error happening in any of the cases. The error rule will be automatically executed to handle the acceptance in DataPower. So these are the things we saw here. And you can see the firewall type. You can have static backend, dynamic backend and loopback. This is what I told you about URL rewrite policy, where you can able to rewrite the URL to the customer to easy to understand for the customer instead of providing the complex real-time URL which is having your backend side organization. This is the local IP and port number. The inbound is mapped with particular IP number. This is the local IP of DataPower, but this local IP is tied with the internet IP. So this is the SSL type where you want to configure the SSL based backend. This is for you want to create the SSL for the DataPower, then you can configure it here. And you can see the request type. What are the request type this XML firewall can able to support? JSON, non-XML, pass-through, SOAP and XML. So other than this, if you select pass-through, your processing policy will not be executed. Because you say pass-through means ignore whatever's coming, send it back. So if you choose your pass through as your request type, none of the processing policy will not execute it. The processing will not policy will not be executed. Whatever you send to the XML firewall, it's coming back. So make sure if you do the pass through, you will get whatever you send, that will be coming back. So so you might not be confused why my policy is not executed. So make sure about that, selecting the corresponding request type and response type. You can do a pass through only for testing the connectivity between the XML firewall. And this already I have shown you the request type, what are the request type available, and how we can able to configure the SSL for the forward and reverse, and what are the objects, which means the attachments. If you are attaching some messages as part of the SOAP request, there's a lot of options available. So based on the options, which means attachment is stripped from the request. Allow, reject the attachment is a request attachment is accepted. Reject, request attachment is rejected. Streaming, it will be processing in streaming mode. Unprocessed, the request attachment will be allowed but it not will be processed. The other things you can able to see here. The request attachment processing rule, the strip, allow, reject, streaming, unprocess. That's what we have explained here. Though this is what the overall background about XML firewall. So thank you for your time. We will get back to you in another video. Thank you.